Hi everyone. I thought I would divert off the tarot track for a minute and talk about books. I am a big book fan, but recently, I say recently, maybe not all that recently, I have been submerging myself in the dark academia genre, as has what seems like the whole world. When I was a kid in school, a teenager, going to university was it was always out of reach. We weren't in a very good area, I suppose. And I was in a pretty bad school. And we didn't really have career days or discussions about what you wanted to do after school or anything like that. It was just learn enough to pass the grades and then leave, and then the rest is on you. And I think no one in my family had gone to university or continued on with their education, and for whatever reason I had it in my head that unless you were really well off, university just wasn't an option. And oh, I'm sorry. And unplug that. And looking back, I really wish that someone had educated me a little bit on the, where we could go from there, because I think had I have known about student loans, about funding, I think I would have tried harder. So I went back to university as an adult, as a mature student with 2 children. I think my husband had seen my academic streak in me. I'm a big learner. I'm not really happy unless I'm learning something. I get very bored unless I'm learning something. And I've just got that studious kind of vibe in me. That's who I am. And I said to my husband, I went back and learned graphic design. I got a bachelor's in graphic design. I then got a master's in typography. I then learned traditional penmanship. Since then, I've self-taught printing. I have a big old printing press. I've always been sort of artistic anyway, and creative. And I just, my husband sort of took me down to the university open day and went, do it. And I think if he hadn't pushed me out of the doors and into that environment, I most probably wouldn't have done it. I most probably would have caved and gotten the fear. But he kicked me through the doors, and it just changed my life. And as it happens, I didn't go to any sort of posh uni. We actually, for the most part, I went to a umbrella of a bigger university that was further away from me, but I went to like this little tiny campus, which used to be an innovation centre. It was basically one of those throw-up buildings. There was nothing, with the polystyrene ceilings and stuff. There was nothing fancy about this university, but the knowledge that was gained was insane. And I just soaked it up. And yeah, I think there's always been I've always had an affinity to the studious sort of lifestyle. I could quite happily spend my entire life in a library, reading, learning, absolutely. I've always, and then, going back to the whole book thing, I've always read horror. I love reading horror. I hate watching it. I cannot watch horror. If I watch a horror film, I will be up for weeks on end, not being able to sleep and jumping at everything. But I feel like the academic and the horror together has just, I found my genre, and I feel it's amazing how many other people feel the same. Anyway, I've gone down a rabbit hole of books, and I thought I would firstly tell you some of the ones that I've read and really, really like. Maybe a couple to stay away from. That's my own personal opinion. But give you my top 3 so far. So, the Dark Academia list so far has included, where do I start? Threadneedle, the Threadneedle series, the Catherine House, Magic for Liars. Those 3, I mean, they're good books. Magic for Liars and Catherine House were a little bit more young adult for me. There was something a little bit more school vibe rather than, you know, uni vibe about them. Threadneedle, again, it's surrounding teenage, late teen sort of relationships. So those 3 were a little bit less, they're not my favorites, but they're still really good books. For me, I absolutely adored The Ninth House and Hellbent. The Ninth House and Hellbent have just been, I haven't actually got who they're by, I need to look that up. Hellbent, I'm sure everyone knows who they're by. By Leigh Bardugo. So I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, I'm sorry. Leigh Bardugo. I did have a bit of a problem with The Ninth House in the way that there seems to be unnecessary things happening in it that just were almost just included just to get a rise out of people. There's like an unnecessary rape, and the way that the rape is dealt with is just ridiculous. Like, have a burger, move on. But if you push that aside, which I don't know if we should, but if you push that aside, the storyline and the characters and the setup, like the university vibes, the structure, they're sort of based on I suppose, how academia meets magic, and how the structure and practice of arcane magic would happen in a normal uni. But it's all, the books are about privilege and power, and unchecked privilege and unchecked power. But they are good, but they aren't my favorite. But I did binge read them when they came out. I just crammed. So they're good reads. I then read The Betrayals, which is the second adult book from Bridget Collins. She came out with The Binding, which is one of my all-time favorite books, and that's for another video, and that's a different genre really. But The Betrayals is an interesting one. It's in a completely different world. It's about someone going back to a really secretive, hush-hush, but has loads of power university, Montvert. And it's all about a game, the Grand Jeu. It's called the Grand Jeu, and it's the nation's game, I suppose. But it's a little bit like a meditation, magic, story, consequence, all mashed together game. They don't really explain the game very well, but the storylines that surround the game, there's sexism in there, there's sexuality in there, there is classism in there, there is gender roles and gender gaps. It's a very well structured, but it's not call it an LGBTQ book, but there's a lot of conversation around those things, and how the characters fall in line with a system that doesn't necessarily accept those things, and then start reviewing their own feelings later down the road. So that was a really good book, although it took me 3 or 4 times to get into it. I started reading the first chapter and it was talking about this rat, and I'm thinking, is this rat a person? Is it a rat? what's going on. I just couldn't grasp it. And then eventually I just stuck with it, and I thought, no, I'm going to do it because everyone's raving about it. I'm going to just stick with it and see if it plays out. And it sort of came about. It gathered itself into something more tangible that I could continue on with. Number 2, my 2 favorites, the Cloisters. The Cloisters actually came to me as a follow-up from The Secret History, which is my number 1. But The Cloisters is by Katy Hayes, and it's about a girl who has graduated. She's now a researcher. She's moved to New York City. She's going to start her research position at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but ends up, because there's an admin error, she ends up working at the Cloisters, which is like a smaller section. But this book is awesome. It is dark, it is mysterious, it is secretive, it's quite sinister. There's like a sinister undertone. It's not outwardly, I don't know, outwardly sinister. I don't know how to explain it. There's a sinister undertone to it, but it's all about power dynamics in friendships, in the workplace, professional rivalries, but it all surrounds the subject of Renaissance magic and tarot, which, I mean, horror. It's not, I wouldn't call it a horror book, but for me, I'm like, horror, you know, academia, magic, tarot. Could you tick any more boxes? This was just a really good read. I loved it. The Cloisters by Katy Hayes. And then my all-time favorite, I wonder how many people would call it their all-time favorite dark academia book, The Secret History by Donna Tart. I know that she wrote The Goldfinch. I've never read it. I've been told it's really sad, and I'm not really in a place right now to deal with the sad vibe. But The Secret History is just maybe one of the best books I've ever read. I love it. I'm going to read you the blurb. Under the influence of their charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at an elite New England college discover a way of thinking and living that is a world away from the humdrum existence of their contemporaries. But when they go beyond the boundaries of normal morality, they slip gradually from obsession to corruption and betrayal, and at last into evil. So it follows some students of Hampton College in Vermont who are studying ancient Greek. It has murder, it has suspense, it is dramatic. There is like a mysterious vibe. You're not entirely sure what's real, what's not at the end. But the themes are isolation, what's the word? Preoccupation with how we appear to others and how they then perceive that or perceive us. There's a constant beauty question in it, and secrets, all about keeping secrets, but it's all isolation, appearance, beauty, secrets, but in the darker aspects. You know, they're the worst aspects of being isolated and how that might affect you, and how those things have consequences. It is a book of consequences. It is just the best book for in my dark academia category. The best book. I don't know. I know that there's another book called These Violent Delights, but I'm aware that there are 2 of those. These Violent Delights. There are 2 books called These Violent Delights. And now my internet's not working. This is the one I'm talking about is the one by Micah Nemerever. Nemerever. Sorry, butchering names, I don't mean to. Apparently that is a good follow-up to, you know, if you're down the dark academia trail. Please, people, give me options because I'm running out of dark academia reads and I don't want to. I have been reading more like magical, V.E. Schwab, the darker shades of magic or whatever it is. To be honest, I wasn't really a fan. Not my favorite, But the dark academia bug has me. I am in the claws of the demon and I need more books. Tell me if you agree. And if you know of any that could follow on from The Secret History, The Cloisters, The Betrayals, please let me know because I need these in my life. I don't know, random book chat. Love you all. Speak to you soon.